You, Sue Ellen.
Yep, so welcome everyone to October's safety webinar. Hopefully everyone's had a great week. Today's webinar, Gary, our CEO, and Andrea Rowe, our General Manager, will be hosting today's webinar. And just a reminder that we will be recording the webinar as well, and that recording will be made available to anyone who requires it. And yeah, welcome everyone who's joined. Lovely. So this month's webinar, Gary will be answering the question on whether it is a requirement to have reversing beepers. He will also discuss the difference between planning for a crisis and planning for an emergency. And of course, this month is National Safe Work Month, which we'll be celebrating, and there's many resources available for people to access to celebrate National Safe Work Month. And Gary will be touching on some other safety news as well. So to start off with, before we go through those items, Gary will be asking our questions of the month, questions of the week.
Thanks very much, Sue Ellen. Yeah, so welcome everyone once again. So let's have a look. Question of the week. I call it question of the week, and of course, where we're running this monthly webinar. So what's wrong with this sign? So have a look at it. This is very common. We see this throughout industry. I think you can buy these commercially. They're ready made up. Danger, hot surface, do not touch. I think eminently sensible warning, eminently sensible instruction. So there's one sign to look at. So today I've actually got three that I'll show you, and at the end of today's session we'll come back to these and I'll explain the answer. So what's wrong with this sign? I think Andrea passed this one on to me. A service line, we often see service lines marked. So there's the second question of the week. What's wrong with this sign? Third and final one that I will share with you this week is what's wrong with this sign. Once again, maybe eminently sensible and appropriate at an entry to a work area for high visibility vest required beyond this point. I'll let you think about those three. These are fairly common sort of signs that we see around the workplace. Each one of these has some defect, and we'll explain what that might be at the end of today's session. So let's turn to the topic of which came out of an inquiry from a friend and reader of our newsletter. Are reversing beepers compulsory? And apparently what this came from was the local council approached the business. They had received a number of complaints from neighbours, particularly when they're at the loading dock. A lot of supermarkets, shopping centres, and a lot of businesses have a lot of their supplies delivered over at night time, out of what's normal business hours. I presume to avoid the traffic in the car parks and on the roads for a lot of these logistics businesses. But if you and I lived very close to some of these centres or shopping centres, supermarkets, or whoever they happen to be, these reversing beepers can be quite annoying and very persistent. So this is the situation. And the question was, they've had complaints to council. They need to do something. Can they turn the beepers off? And I think that's, I can understand where the question comes from. So let's have a look at the issues. Number one, most of the beepers are excessively loud. That is, they may well be serving a safety purpose, but they could serve the safety purpose at a much lower level. And what we find is either manufacturers or installers, suppliers of these equipment, make them louder than necessary. And their logic is, once they're installed, we're required to make sure they're audible above background noise. So to be sure they're always audible above background noise, they pump the level up much higher. And then no one can criticise them for saying it was a defective reversing beeper. So let's have a look at through some of the issues that come out of this. Number one, reversing beepers are not a legal requirement in any workplace or road situation. Isn't that interesting? But we see it on virtually all trucks, delivery vehicles, mobile plant and equipment, and it's eminently sensible. So let's have a look. The Australian design rules, often referred to as the ADRs. You'll hear people say the ADR, Australian Design Rule. This is the rules that are a legal requirement for any vehicle to go onto public roads in Australia. So the ADRs do not mandate reversing beepers. So there's the first thing. So looking at the image here, that truck and any other trucks are not required by ADRs to be on our Australian roads to even have a reversing beeper. So come back to the original question of the trucking business saying, can we turn the beepers off? So I'll come back to this one short to that aspect of the question in a moment. What I can tell you is that there is new Australian design rules coming out in the 1st of November 2025, which is coming up fairly fast, so 2 years out. All new vehicles and truck models will have to be fitted with reversing cameras and motion sensors, not reversing beepers. So all new vehicles on Australian roads from 1 November will have to be fitted with reversing cameras and motion sensors. And from November 2027, 2 years further on, even existing models sold will have to have those that equipment. So what we can see, so let's come back to where the problem and the complaint comes from. One, they are too loud. They are serving more than the purpose of alerting someone immediately behind a truck in a loading dock, if indeed that sound is emanating in the near neighbourhood to multiple homes in the near area. Clearly it is louder than it needed to be because it is projecting that sound right out around. So it's putting it out 100 metres, possibly 200 metres away. You can hear these reversing beepers. So the question is, can we turn them off? I've told you it's not a legal requirement, but it is always unsafe to allow individuals within your business to turn certain safety devices off. So we strongly discourage this discretionary approach to, do I turn them off? You and I know what will happen. If you think that the reversing beepers are part of your safety system, and indeed you find that to be true, and you do need them, the problem is allowing individuals to respond to a noise complaint is the beepers will likely be turned off when you really need it, i.e. somebody one day will be behind there and you've got to question, is safety going to override noise complaints? And I won't get into that in this session today. I'm going to tell you the issue and the answer to reversing beepers. And the problem is the beepers are likely to be turned off the one time you actually need them, because they're likely to be, once they're turned off, they'll probably be left off indefinitely. So I came across a firm that supplies and installs what they call a Squawka type beeper. And they claim that this beeper is of a lower level and it's controlled so that it only projects the sound 5 to 10 decibels above the background noise. So instead of projecting it 20 decibels above or whatever, it is programmed to only be just above the background noise. So it's only loud enough. It's of a lower tone. That's not that high-pitched screeching sound that many of us will be familiar with. You know, if you've got even the waste removal trucks in your street, particularly if you're in a court or a dead-end street and they've got to back up, you'll hear that very loud beep, 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 beep as they're backing up. And you'll think that's great, that's a safety device. So one, it's too loud. Two, it's not a true safety device. You know what it is? It is a device that's telling somebody behind, jump out of the way because I'm coming through. And yet the law and workplace safety and road law requires the drivers to only operate their vehicle safely. So they're not allowed to run over a pedestrian, even if the pedestrian doesn't jump out of the way with the reversing beeper. So the reversing beeper does not show the driver whether somebody is behind the vehicle or not. It gives them no indication. And it relies on the recipient of hearing that noise to jump out of the way and jump out of the way in time. So you can now see that reversing beepers have a very limited application. And so they're overused. And in some workplaces, there is so much noise. You go onto a construction site, sometimes the noise is all around you everywhere, and it starts to become confusing. So this becomes a bit of a safety issue. So squawker type beepers will reduce the excessive noise, one in the neighbourhood and two probably in the workplace, and more likely they claim it's projected out the back of the truck. I don't know. I think sound emanates out from the source all around. But as I repeat, it's unsafe to allow drivers to make individual decisions to turn safety devices off. So in principle, as safety professionals, we don't think that's a good idea. We know that the beepers are too loud. Squawker beepers are going to be softer, lower level, and just above the background noise. But as I've told you, reversing beepers are not a true safety device, certainly not a fully effective one, because the driver still can't see behind the truck, still doesn't have a sensor to tell the driver, even if the beeper's not there, whether there is an object that they're going to crash into, whether that's a person or some other object. Remember, they shouldn't be backing into a space they can't see. So just projecting noise out the back and hoping anyone can and will jump out of the way is not really a good safety device. And from 2025 and 2027, the need for reversing beepers is going to almost disappear, because reversing cameras and motion sensor detectors are going to give the driver direct and immediate information about objects or people at the back of the truck, and the truck driver has prime responsibility to stop and not run over a pedestrian. This is quite clear. So in the workplace, apart from road laws out on public roads and in public car parks, it is the obligation of forklift drivers and other plant and mobile equipment operators not to strike pedestrians. That's how the workplace safety laws are crafted. So this idea that we give a beeper and you jump out of the way, stop thinking that way. Start thinking, how do we actually keep the driver informed, properly informed all around the vehicle to do what they are legally required to do, and that is not run over pedestrians. So not pedestrians to be alert and jump out of the way because something's beeping and coming at them. So I just wanted, to quickly have a different way of thinking when we look at reversing beepers. We just keep putting them on plant and equipment everywhere. We're making the whole environment around us is an unpleasant place with excessive noise. It's confusing. It's not adding to safety, but people still do this. So as an interim, you might look at squawker type beepers. Let's just tone it down, project it only where we need the sound, only to the level that we need. And moving forward, you may even be looking to reversing cameras and sensors retrospectively fitted to your truck fleet, delivery vehicles or whatever, or plant and equipment in the interim. But in the future, you won't be able to get trucks, vans or cars without reversing cameras and motion sensor detectors at the rear of the vehicles. So moving forward, the need for beepers is going to greatly reduce. And so for us as safety professionals, you'll still have some need in some workplaces. Someone's saying forklift lights work, and I think that's correct, and probably much better than the excessive sound. Some people tell me the flashing lights can also be distracting and a bit of a problem as well. And we've seen increasingly the laser lights around forklift trucks showing the driver and pedestrians the pedestrian exclusion zone visually, shown live, active as you go, can be another helpful way of dealing with it. So moving forward, ADRs are going to essentially they have and will mandate better safety solutions than reversing beepers. And that'll make, I think, the world a quieter place and a happier place for most. And we can target where we need something like a reversing beeper or some audible alarm for some function. We might still have a need, like around a crane or something. There might be something unusual where this is an appropriate addition to our safety system, but let's not overdo it now. Let's look if we can start moving back to squawker type beepers interim and cameras and motion sensors from this point. So something to think about there with reversing beepers. We see a lot of this now. Just briefly, I'll just touch on an article in our October newsletter produced by Dr. Stephen Webber of our team, and I won't do justice to the topic, but I'll just touch on a couple of points which may be of interest to you. So occasionally, when we're discussing these issues with clients and friends, the discussion comes up around what's the difference between a crisis and an emergency. It's a good question. There's got to be where's the border between when something is no longer an emergency and it now jumps over the line? So you need a criteria, because often people, particularly in larger businesses and corporations, will have, apart from site emergency personnel, which won't be full-time, it's just that some of your team will be first aiders, some may be evacuation wardens, or have some other role in a fire or evacuation or chemical spill. But when does it trip over and become a crisis? And bigger companies will have a crisis management team. And so at a certain point, an emergency, for example, may well become a crisis. So the first bit is and I can't tell you what that criteria is, because every business has its own risk appetite. That is how big a risk they're happy to take, and also how much authority they're happy to hand over to a site plant manager, for example, to manage a fire, chemical spill, something of that nature. Some will have a very low appetite for risk and demand that every chemical spill be reported to head office. This becomes a major issue because we're sensitive to this. We're serious about environmental protection, and we don't want any contamination of drains, waterways, or soil contamination on our site. So you can see that some businesses will have a slightly different criteria as to where that crossover point is. But just to help you and just broadly, site managers typically deal with immediate emergencies like fire, as evacuation, gas leak, chemical spill, probably chemical spill on site rather than a major off-site chemical spill. Whereas crisis it generally affects the whole business. Even though it may have occurred at a site, it may be of such scale that this is going to impact on the entire business. So through either cost, bad publicity and reputation, for example, a fire on site and the wastewater went off site and into the local creek or something of that nature. So that's not just a site issue now. This is a reputation and compliance issue for the company, the corporation, the organisation. So typically a crisis, even though it may occur at a site, is of such magnitude that it is beyond the capability or authority of local managers to resolve, and it can affect the entire business. So you can read the article in our October news if you like a bit more, or call or email our office or Stephen Webber at Safety Action, and he can take you through more of this. We occasionally help our clients with emergency planning and also with periodic crisis exercise, typically for the executive team, so they understand their plan and what their role is compared to site managers. And everyone has a slightly different role. We're not trying to cut across that. So a crisis exercise maybe once a year is a good thing for major companies, so that we know what the plan is and we'll go through that systematically. So there's crisis versus emergency. So at this point, I'll hand over to Andrea. Thank you for once again, Andrea, I know you got in from an overnight flight. So tell us about October, National Safe Work Month, I understand.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. So we're currently in October, which means it's well known as Safety Month. This month also has World Safety at Work Day, which is also remembered as the Lost Workers Day as well.
Yeah.
So there's a few significant days in the month. And so each state is actually running their own events, but the main one that provides some really good resources for businesses to use to promote Safety Month is Safe Work Australia. And the slogan for this year's Safety Month is, for everyone's safety, work safely, which is a simple one, but also meaningful. And so this year they do make a point that the focus is on not just physical safety, but also there's a focus on psychological health. And so there's a lot of resources, both from, in Victoria's WorkSafe Victoria has week by week resources, so does Safe Work Australia, and so giving you topical things to use to host toolbox talks or events in your workplace each week of the month. So we're already halfway through, but we still have some more time of Safety Month. So there's still, time to host an event or get involved in your workplace. One of the initiatives Safe Work Australia is calling is a safe tea. So having sort of a morning tea for safety and hosting some, providing information and giving an opportunity for consultation and feedback. So, check out the Safe Work Australia website. There's actually a QR code on the screen. If you're got your mobile phone ready, you can scan that. That will take you straight to the resources. Also, check out your local authorities website. There's still events happening, certainly in Victoria. There's lots of online webinars you can join from anywhere, but if you're in regional places in Victoria, there's actually face-to-face events that WorkSafe Victoria are hosting for free. Also other states have events, so check those out and get involved in Safety Month.
Thanks for that, Andrea. Now, I think you also pointed out to us, I'll bring up the next slide for you, just in South Australia, a development with the safety inspectors and cameras.
Yes, so this has now been approved. So and so now there's in South Australia, the safety inspectors are allowed to wear body cameras, but I understand it will be well utilised. So they will be rolling this out, and I expect that in the near future it will actually be standard that the safety inspectors, like the police in Victoria, they actually will be standard practice that they will wear the body cameras. And now they tell us it's for the safety of the inspectors, so hopefully to reduce the likelihood of abuse of inspectors, but also they're collecting now live evidence. So the intent is to reduce disputes. But if you're a workplace in South Australia, it's certainly worth keeping in mind that, if there's an incident, the inspectors come to site to collect evidence. They will actually, having a camera on them at all times, they'll be able to very effectively see a lot and capture that as evidence. So it's there's not much we can do about that. It's just I guess you just need to know and keep that in mind. I also saw, and I apologize, I forget which state it was, but another state is doing a trial on the cameras also. I can't remember, I think it might be Tasmania or Western Australia. So that was in the news just this week. So no doubt if this is successful for the authorities, this is probably likely to roll out across Australia soon.
Thanks, Andrea. And yeah, I was just going to ask you, I think it will roll out around Australia as well. And I think it more likely when they attend reported disputes or complaints or serious accidents, because that's probably going to be the most heated interchanges with inspectors. So thanks for that, Andrea. Now, I think also you're a regular supporter of the Southern Safety Group, and there are other safety groups around Australia, but this is one near us. Do you want to just quickly tell us where the next event is? Do they have a topic for the next event, or does that come up?
Well, actually, I'm presenting at the next event this October on the 30th. I'll be talking about dangerous goods. So I'll be sharing my experiences, and in the description I've said that I'll be talking about having seen some of the very worst dangerous goods storages in Victoria. Some of those were fined significantly recently. And also talking about, you know, the clients that we work with, you know, working with some of the leaders in safety in Australia for chemical storage. So I'll be sharing from my experiences, some of my tips on some of the commonly missed compliance obligations, and some just simple things where to get information about doing the right thing when storing chemicals, especially dangerous goods. Southern Safety Group, it's just a good network. It's for all of us safety professionals. It's really important to have a network of people that you know and you can just turn to. I know that in the industry, we all like to help each other out. So, you know, it's just important to know people that you can ask when you need just some tips and advice. I certainly know it's helped me a lot in my career. So Southern Safety Group, we meet at the Springers Leisure Centre in Keysborough. I think from memory, it costs about $5 for non-members to join in the group. So it's a very small fee, something like $50 to join for the year. So I would encourage any of you in Victoria to think about joining the Southern Safety Group, or there's also a Central Western. There's several other safety groups that I know of in Victoria and certainly around Australia. So welcome to get involved.
Thanks, Andrea. I assume the local WorkSafe authorities will know of the region of these safety groups and be able to, both in Victoria and elsewhere, to
not that I know of, Gary. The WorkSafe Victoria certainly does support the Southern Safety Group, and at least every year make a presentation to the group, but I'm not aware of anywhere on the website where these are advertised. So, you know, we just try and remind our clients of the events we're aware of and put them in our newsletter.
Is there a Western Safety Group and a Northern Safety Group, for example?
I think there's a Western group. I'm not sure about a Northern, but, you know, there certainly are other groups. And if we could find out who they all are, we'll put them in our newsletter.
Excellent. Thanks, Andrew. We'll have that coming up sometime soon. Thanks for joining us again. I know you'll need a bit of rest after an overnight flight. So thanks for that, Andrea. So let's return to our question of the week. Well, I showed you 3 different signs. Let's see if you've picked up maybe what it should be. So the sign I showed you was on the right: danger, hot surface, do not touch, eminently sensible instruction. The correct sign is on the left: warning, hot surface, do not touch, and below it is halfway there, if you like, caution. The standard says warning or caution, and they can use the words interposed, but I think warning is the preferred text wording these days, but everyone will understand if you use caution. You'll notice it's that yellow or orange background, so not the red of the danger. So the key thing is here's a key point. You're going to think of a safety sign. First you ask, is it a fatality risk? Then you use danger. If it is not a fatality risk, but you're worried about safety and injury, then it is a warning or caution sign. So that's the first 2 distinctions, just to show on this one. It's not the whole thing. I'm planning a separate webinar coming up just on safety signage. But today, for question of the week, that gives you the key distinction here. So coming to this one, and I think, Andrea, you gave me this photograph, and Andrea reminded me, on the right-hand side, you get these stickers as standard. And you'll see fire service, and it's got an arrow in both directions. And what you're meant to do is cut either the left-hand end or the right-hand end off, as shown in the left-hand photographs, to show you the direction of flow within the piping or conduits that you've got. So it's only a minor, if you like, a technicality. We understand it's a fire service and it's been labelled, but if you want to complete it correctly, you'll actually show the direction of flow. So people just bought the sign and didn't realise that they're meant to cut off one end or the other to indicate direction of flow. So it's not the whole answer, but it tells you something there. So the third one, caution, high vis, safety vest required beyond this point, may be a physical requirement. Here on the left-hand side, although it's a joint signage showing other personal protective equipment as well, but the vest is there on the right-hand side of that joint image. So this protective equipment must be worn beyond this point. Essentially, the Australian standard for safety signs indicates a blue circle for mandatory safety signage. And so what I can share with you is that there are 3 key Australian standards. If you're looking at improving or doing a safety sign survey, AS 1319, safety signs in the workplace, which I've just mentioned, indicates the difference between a danger and a warning sign, and also a mandatory action item like wearing PPE is generally within a blue circle with white. So you need to be consistent with colours, shape, and wording. The colours I've mentioned, AS 1318, which is essentially the safety colour code, and AS 1345, the identification of contents of pipes, conduits and ducts. As I've mentioned, we'll do a separate session on this coming up soon because there's a bit more on safety signage. But the other thing I can share with you, you should be doing, we recommend when we do safety audits of our friends and clients, one of the items is, have you done an annual safety sign survey? So if you've got safety signage, it can't be missing or faded that it's not readed or obstructed by storage or something else. So you should do an annual safety sign survey. And sometimes clients are too busy, and one of our team, we've done this for many clients. So they can be assured that what they've got is correct, appropriate, and in good condition safety signage. So you might consider that. So with that, we've passed our half hour and coming to the end, and I'll hand back to Sue Ellen.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Gary and Andrea. That was a very interesting webinar this month, especially the signage images. I'm sure that would have tripped up a number of people. So next month, we will answer the question of how high can you stack IBCs, or intermediate bulk containers. We'll also go through Safe Work Australia's new asbestos register that they've issued for workplaces. And then we'll also discuss the move to replace gas heating and gas cooktops with reverse cycle heating and cooling and electric cooktops. So that's going to be something to look forward to. Well, thank you very much for everyone that joined this morning, and have a lovely weekend. Thanks, Gary and Andrea.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay,
everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.